This is Laura from the Peaceful Life podcast, and you're listening to Pop Goes Your World.
If you haven't already, subscribe on iTunes. And while you're there, please leave us a rating and review.
And now it's time for our feature presentation.
I'm Chris McBrien, and the pop culture from Generation X is everything to me.
And I'm Derek Myers, and I'm here to educate Chris on the great pop culture of today's generation.
Episode 297, Logan Movie Review. Chris McBrien along with Derek Myers, and this is Pop Goes Your World, the pop culture podcast for the generations. Coming back after another short vacation getaway, but we are back, and this week we're going to be taking a look at the 2017 movie Logan, starring Hugh Jackman. But Derek, before we get to that, what pop culture have you been able to take in recently, my friend?
Well, we just finished the Summer Olympic Games in Paris 2024. So yes. I spent the last 2 weeks watching a ton of Olympic events.
Okay.
Always a good time. I always like it when the Olympics are in a different time zone, but I like it when the time zone is more west of us, because then all the events are happening live late at night, like really late at night, because I tend to stay up late. This time they're in Paris. They're 5 or 6 hours ahead of us. So like the events were starting at like 4 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m. And then by like 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, our time, they're done. And so it was a little bit of a bummer for me because I basically had to record everything and then I would watch it after work or in the evening. But the advantage to that was, as I'm going through some of the, honestly, like some events I love and I watched every minute of it. Some events I didn't really care that much for, so I could like fast forward through it. Mm-hmm. Or in some events where they have like a number of heats and then there's all this delayed downtime while they reset the track or they get the pool ready. And so again, having it on record, you could just fast forward through a lot of that stuff. So I think I found my new favorite way to watch the Olympics is to record it. But then the key was to watch it rather quickly after it finished, because I did find that so many big things were potentially going to be spoiled on the internet.
Oh yeah.
A lot of like sometimes I would catch half of a headline or I would see an image and not really understand why it was trending, and then I would watch this stuff and go, oh, I get it now. And so that was just part of my Olympic experience. But I
have some questions for you.
Fire away.
Okay, so first of all, what is your favorite Olympic event, Summer Olympic event, having watched them just recently? I don't know if you had one previously or you have one now. Like, what do you like watching? What events do you miss?
I like all the sprinting events, both in the pool and on the track. Like anything, the 100 meters, 200 meters, 400 meters, or in the pool when they have to do like the individual medley where they got to do all 4 strokes back and like they do the front fly back free, or where they do the team relays, both again on the track and in the pool. Like I prefer events that are timed and where it's literally a race. You're racing against all the competitors. I'm not as big a fan of things like the jumping events, the throwing events, where like say like high jump, for example, where and as someone who when I was a younger person participated in high jump, like I enjoyed doing it and watching it, but like, oh, they've set it to 1 meter 80 and you watch 7 people jump over it. Then you're like, now it's 182 and you watch them jump over it. It's like, I like the race. It's just bam. If you hear the gun, they go, and the first guy to cross the finish line gets a gold medal. You're like, that's the way Olympics should be.
So I didn't watch a lot of Olympics, but I did see one where the guy was doing the high jump and his junk got in the way.
Oh, my.
Pole vault.
Pole vault. That's right.
Yeah. So, yeah, and I mean, this was very much there was a huge internet and social media presence. I mean, there probably has been for the last few Olympics, but I was more in tune with it this year because I watched so much of it.
Sure.
So many things I actually saw, if not live, on the record like later that day. So when things started to happen and there were memes and you got to see these images and there was a lot of comments, good and bad in some cases, I was very well aware of what was happening. And it's interesting because, you know, both you and I are a couple of older guys. We may not be on the TikTok and the Instagram like the kids are, but Normally stuff happens online and I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. Whereas this time I felt like I was actually a part of it. So that was fun and interesting to be a part of that. And then after the
I have another question for you.
Yeah. Okay. Fire away.
What are your thoughts on the breakdancing? I heard they had breakdancing as an event at the Olympics. Now I saw like a video of someone doing it, and I don't know if it was a joke or what it was. It was like kind of crappy. I don't know.
I watched every minute of it, men's and women's. It was awesome.
Oh,
it was
really?
so much fun. And on the men's side, the Canadian won the gold medal, so that was extra fun as we were able to root for our own countrymen. I mean, like any event that is interpretive, right? This is one of the things. So like in the Winter Olympics, you have figure skating.
Yeah.
Which, as a guy who really likes hockey, you would think, well, figure skating can't be that much different. I mean, there's certainly a tremendous amount of athleticism that is required to be an Olympic level figure skater. And
But
I'm
it's
not denying anybody.
Yeah.
But it's so subjective.
Yeah.
And when I was younger, I dated a girl who was a figure skater, and like she was trying to educate me on how it worked and all the politics involved and why the music selection was important. And like it just seemed ridiculous that, you know, if this judge doesn't like the color of your outfit, they may score you a little more poorly regardless of how good you are. I'm like, it's just so subjective for so many reasons. So that's why I like something like a sprint where it's like gun goes off, first guy to cross the line, that guy gets the medal. No question about it. We got instant replays down to the 100th of a second. Unless the guy fails his drug test or cheats in some way, that's the gold medal winner. There's no question. And so you get things like the breakdancing, which again, where my wife and I are watching it going, was that looked impressive? Was that good? And like the judges in some cases were losing their mind, and you're like, or the commentator, they had a couple color commentators. I'm like, okay, that the commentators seemed pretty impressed. And then something would happen. We're like, oh my God, that looked amazing. And they go, oh, they didn't do that very well. And I'm like, what? That looked awesome. So again, it's being a part of that community, right? Like every sport has their people, and I'm not a breakdancing people. I haven't been since the 80s, and even then I wasn't. But
so you're saying you were never a big fan of like Breakin' 2 Electric Boogaloo?
Well, no, not really. I mean, I'm a fan of the name, but
now that breakdancing is part of the Olympics, somewhere out there, Shabadoo and Boogaloo Shrimp are like celebrating.
Well, I heard that they're not carrying it forward to the next Olympics. It was on like a trial basis, and they've already said this is it. You know, they've announced there are 6 new sports going in next year, and there are 4 or 5 coming out from this year, and break-in was only in it the 1 year.
Oh man! So there'll be no Olympic Breakin' 2 Electric Boogaloo.
No, apparently not. At least not in 2028 in Los Angeles. But so that was the majority of my viewing. Sure. I mean, I did have a chance to go and watch an older movie from the 90s called Sudden Death with Jean-Claude Van Damme.
That's the one about hockey where he's in like Pittsburgh or something? Yeah. I never saw it. I remember it.
I'd never seen it before. I remember it was a rental. It was a very popular rental when I worked at Blockbuster, but I never saw it. And the only reason I listened to it is one of my other podcasts I listened to, they did a review of it like 3 or 4 months ago, and I had it on my phone, and I was going through and trying to delete a whole bunch of old podcasts that either I had already listened to or just thought I'm never going to listen. And I see this one, it's like Sudden Death. And I'm like, let me see if I can find that on my streamers. And I found it on one of them, and I probably Tubi of all things. And I was like, okay,
I love the Tubi. Tubi's good.
So I just watched, and it was garbage. The movie is terrible.
It's terrible, I'm sure.
But it was kind of like like so much of it doesn't hold up.
Jean-Claude Van Damme, that movie sucked.
Yeah, there were some parts that were funny for all the wrong reasons, but then I got to watch it the one night for 90 minutes or so, and then the next day I got to listen to the podcast episode, which is another 90 minutes. So I got 3 hours of entertainment out of it. So from that point of view, it wasn't so bad. And then, believe it or not, I actually had time to watch a short documentary.
For 40 days and 40 nights, he watches documentaries. He likes to learn about the world. It's Derek's Documentaries. Derek's Documentaries.
Educate us, my friend, please.
Well, and we're going to keep with the sports theme because it's a sports documentary. Cool. As I've mentioned on a few other episodes, ESPN in the States and TSN here in Canada carry a series of documentaries called 30 for 30. And they're always about something to do with sports. And the one I watched was called I'm Just Here for the Riot. And it was about the year the Boston Bruins beat the Vancouver Canucks for the Stanley Cup Championships in Game 7 in Vancouver. And the fans of Vancouver went nuts and had a riot and caused millions of dollars of damage.
What year was that? Was that
2011.
Oh, wow.
Yep. June 15th, 2011. Boston Bruins, Stanley Cup champions.
Okay.
The things that you know when you're a fan. In any case, the documentary was interesting. Like, it really, the hockey part of it was only like the first 10 minutes, where they sort of set it up and here's what it was, and Vancouver was favored to win, and it was in Vancouver, and then Boston ended up winning 6-0. And so by the middle of the second period, Boston's up 3-0, and they're looking amazing, and Vancouver's clearly like looking at each other going, what the hell's going on here? And the fans started to realize, like, I don't think our team's coming back from this. Like, this Boston team's red hot right now. And so they had all of these giant monitors set up all around the downtown Vancouver area so that the fans could be there because they were expecting to win a Stanley Cup championship. And one thing led to another, and people started fighting and pushing and vandalizing and burning things. And then you had, 100,000 people in their downtown core, and there was a riot. And then as the game progressed, so this was when it was 3-0. Well, the final score was 6-0. So you can imagine every time Boston scored another goal, the crowd just got more and more into it. And at the end of the game, who wins the Stanley Cup? Boston. You see the Bruins cheering and skating around on the ice with a cup over their head, and the fans are going ballistic for the wrong reasons. And a lot of stuff happened. So one of the things that made this documentary interesting that I thought was they said this was like, sports riots have happened, and they unfortunately continue to happen. They're not happening every year all the time, but various cities for various sports, there have been riots in the past, including Vancouver. It actually happened in, I think it was 94 when they lost to the New York Rangers. Vancouver, people of Vancouver rioted then as well. And
you think of Vancouver as being such a peaceful city.
Yeah.
Apparently not. And that's why I was asking you about the date, because I remember Vancouver in 1994. I think they were against the Rangers. But I didn't remember them going to the finals again after that. That's why I was like,
So, but the thing that made this interesting was in 2011, people had mobile phones with cameras on them, and social media was a thing. It was a relatively new thing, but it was still a thing. And so everything was captured on video. Everything was posted to social media. And within days of all of this happening, there were tons of websites where people were asked to post their pictures and videos of anything and everything they saw from the riot. And the police were able to charge hundreds, if not thousands of people with fines and criminal charges for the behavior of the things that they did during the riot, because everybody was filming everything. And there was no expectation from most people of any sort of repercussions, because the internet was in its relative infancy. Social media was just starting. Nobody had the forethought that, hey, if my picture gets posted, someone may actually see me smashing this window and I may have to eventually pay for this. But that's exactly what happened. And so the documentary follows the story of like 4 or 5 people that did some pretty crazy things during the riot for really no reason other than mob mentality. But the cops threw the book at them, and rightly so in some cases, because they did a lot of things that led other people to do a lot of things. And it was just an interesting perspective and a reminder that in today's day and age, everything you do is recorded on video. Everything is seen, and nobody gets away with anything anymore. And so the documentary was that's what it was more about, was the aftermath of the riot and how they tracked down all the people that did so many, unlawful things during this recklessness that really was just stupid all around. But anyway, it was literally called "I'm Just Here for the Riot."
Cool. Yeah. Okay, so Derek, as I'm sure you know, Jaws is one of my favorite movies of all time.
I believe that has been mentioned on a previous show,
maybe
once or twice.
And I've maybe seen it once or twice.
Yeah, wait, you're talking Jaws 3D, right?
No, of course, the original, which I've seen like a bazillion times.
Oh,
and the thing is, when you've seen a movie as many times as I've seen Jaws, it's really tough to watch it again and get anything new out of it. Like a different perspective on it. Like it's not possible, right? But then I mentioned this last year, but last year, like my local movie theater is always showing old movies. And last year they were playing Jaws, but it was in 3D and 4K. And I took my son to go see it, and watching it on the big screen in 3D, that was a new perspective for me on that film. So it was really cool. Sure. But recently I had another new perspective on it. So I mentioned this summer how my wife and I took a trip to Martha's Vineyard, and I visited all the Jaws filming locations. So the other night, my wife, I don't know what was going on. She just turns to me. She's like, let's watch Jaws. And I'm like,
Was it your birthday?
I know. I'm like, I've never wanted to say no. I'm like, I knew I married her for a reason, you know? And she's like, I want to watch it and look for all the places that we visited. I was like, oh, that's a good idea.
That's fair.
So we put it on. And once again, I was able to find a new perspective while watching this movie. Like every time that I've watched that film, I always focus on the actors in the foreground, like what's going on between them. I've never really focused on the background, like at least not all that much. So when we watched it this time, I spent the whole time just looking at the background, you know, and my wife and I had a blast watching it because we were both like, hey, there's the lighthouse or there's Chappie Ferry, or like we walked by that building, you know. And I think my favorite part was the scene when Brody and Hooper and the mayor are all in front of that big billboard.
Yes.
And then they turn and you can see the ocean out behind them over the cliff. My wife and I stood in that spot for what seemed like forever. She never wanted to leave that spot. We were there. It's in Akina Hills. Mm-hmm. And she's like, I just want to be here forever. And then the camera in the movie pans over to the gay headlight. And we're both like, hey, we were like just there, you know? So it was really cool. So it's always good to watch Jaws. Always good to watch Jaws. But for me, this time was extra special because we were just both so enthusiastic about like the beaches and the locations, and it was a totally new perspective. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that. It was kind of neat.
Nice.
So, all right, I got this.
Here's your dad joke of the week.
So Derek, my youngest son, he's 11 years old. He keeps bugging me, you know, in a good way. But he's like, Dad, I've got a joke for your podcast. I have a joke. You got to tell this joke. And then he
can't be any worse than the ones you tell. So I welcome all new jokes from your 11-year-old.
There you go. And every week I do the podcast. I talk to him the next day, and he's like, he'll wake up in the morning, he'll come down. Dad, did you use my joke? And I'm like, no, I didn't. Sorry. So anyway, I got to use it. So here goes. Okay. So Derek, what kind of factory produces mediocre products?
I have no idea.
A satisfactory.
That's actually really good.
Oh, good. He'll be pleased to hear that.
I am a super nerd.
Dude, I don't know how you didn't get more girls in high school.
Or guys for that matter. I got no.
Nothing. You're a
To this
caveman.
day-
Just club them over the head and drag them
Yeah.
home.
Oh, my.
And I play a lot of Dungeons and Dragons.
You're not a nerd.
They
Women love them.
well, yeah, they do, but they're all nerdy women. So
The Fonz is 73 years old.
Raiders of the Lost Ark is basically Steven Spielberg giving a master's class on how to make a movie.
I found a Fonzie shirt that I want
I
for
saw
Christmas.
it, yeah.
And my wife was like, you're not getting that.
Can I finish? Okay, I'm finished.
Okay, Derek. So for our movie review this time around, it was over to you, and you decided to go with 2017's Logan, starring Hugh Jackman. So why don't you get us started? You can tell us, like, why did you want me to watch this movie?
Well, the main reason I wanted you to watch this movie is the movie Deadpool and Wolverine recently came out in the theater. I had a chance to see it before we recorded our last episode. And for those who hadn't had a chance to listen to it, I thought the new movie was fantastic. It's made over $1 billion. It's racing towards, I think it's already in the top 10 highest grossing movies of all time. And I think it's like the third highest grossing comic book movie of all time. And it's not slowing down at all. This movie's fantastic. And it does a lot of, it pays a lot of service to like fans of the genre, comic book nerds. They really, I think they really did a good job. They honored the material in a way that was respectful while still giving us a decent movie. Doing a lot of wink wink kind of jokes to the camera, and in some cases literally wink wink jokes. I mean, you saw Deadpool, you know how he literally breaks the fourth wall and talks to the audience. And so having come out of that movie and enjoying it so much, I started to think about the other movies that Hugh Jackman has been in where he has played Wolverine. And I think, if I remember correctly, this was his 10th time portraying this character on screen. And so I know that before this movie came out, the last time he had played this particular character was in the movie Logan, with the intent of that being his final time portraying this character on screen. And part of the reason was that the movie Logan borrows from a comic book series, which is sort of like the final swan song of your favorite hero. What happens when Logan becomes an old man and he's not quite as super as he used to be, and the world has changed and superheroes aren't really a thing. Like, how does he go gracefully into the pasture, into that good night, and have like sort of his last adventure? And so the movie Logan is supposed to be like the end of it. It's the end cap on a franchise that they knew they were going to be selling from Fox to Disney, and they figured Disney's going to do what they did already with the other stuff. They're just going to reboot it. They're going to recast all the roles, and you're going to get all new X-Men characters. So in order to give some closure to the stories that they've already been telling over on Fox for the last 20 years, Logan was sort of the book stop, the backstop. This is it. Here's the end of our franchise. Here's the end of our franchise character. Here it is, but we're going to do it in a way that's respectful. And the thing is, Logan is, if I remember correctly, outside of Deadpool, the only other comic book movie that Marvel's affiliated with that has an R rating, because they wanted the director, the writers wanted it to be able to be very violent, very gritty. They wanted them to be able to say lots of swear words and things of that nature. Whereas all the other movies before that had been rated like PG because they were trying to maximize the dollars. They want little kids to come and see their favorite comic book heroes fight the comic book villains with like play fighting and no blood and no death and any of that stuff. They want to throw all that out the window for Logan. They're like, we want to tell a grown-up story, a serious movie. We don't want to have any restrictions. We want to tell the story we want to tell the way we want to tell it, and it's going to be a restricted movie. And we're going to sort of make it in that sort of film noir style, we're going to treat it seriously. And I think they succeeded. The movie did very well critically. It did very well financially. And even if you're not a real big comic book movie fan, I think this movie, I feel that this movie probably holds up pretty well. I think there's a lot to like, even if you're not really a comic book movie kind of person, which I know, Chris, you are not really a comic book movie kind of person.
I have a quick question for you. Can I jump in with a quick question?
Yeah, I'm done.
So from what I understand, you're saying that this was sort of the way for them to wrap up that story arc of that character.
Yes, that was their intent, and they were very clear about that from the outset.
So then,
fans
how does it go about that 7 years later they come up with Wolverine versus Deadpool?
Well, you got to go see the movie because they explain that at the start of this movie.
Because we want to make more money.
Well, that's a big part of it, but the way they do it in the Wolverine and Deadpool movie, again, I think pays a lot of respect to the source material, and they do it in a way that the fans will appreciate and not be like, oh my God, are you kidding me? Like, that's so dumb. Like, they didn't just say something like the whole thing was a dream and you wake up and he's all good and better. No, they actually worked with
like Patrick Duffy in Dallas.
Yeah, exactly. So, but anyway, I'm not going to spoil it.
Yeah, like you mentioned, like I'm not a huge fan of comic book movies, and I've seen very few of the Marvel movies. In fact, the only ones I've ever seen are the ones you make me watch for the podcast, Derek. Like, that's it.
And there's only been a few of them,
Iron Man, Guardians of the Galaxy,
Thor, and Black Panther.
Oh, yeah, we did Black Panther, and we did Deadpool, too. So
Deadpool's not really a part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Well, it is now, apparently.
I mean, it will be. Yeah, it's being wrapped into it. But the one that you and I watched, it's sort of, again, it's part of the Fox universe.
Well, like I said, I spent all my time watching Jaws over and over again. If that's not apparent.
Fault you for that.
So, and not only that, I had never even read a Wolverine comic in my entire life. Only thing I knew about him going into this was that he's got these sharp claws coming out of his fists. How they got there, I had no idea. I don't know if he was like a human or an alien, or if he's like an actual Wolverine human mix of some kind. I had zero idea, which I think is good.
But you don't need to know. And for years, when the character was in the comics, they had never explained it. He was a man of mystery, which is why the fans really liked him, because Marvel never felt they had to explain how he got the way he was. They're just like, here's what he is now. He's a man of mystery. He has a secret past that nobody knows about. Because honestly, the creators at the time were like, we don't know. They're like, then let's just play into that. Of course, years later, they're like, you know how we can make a lot of money? Let's make a series of comics that explains Wolverine's origin and how this became. And it's like, you know what, guys? We really didn't need that. It was a lot better before you pulled the curtain back.
One thing I will say about this movie is the title doesn't do it any favors. Because I mentioned this to my 15-year-old son. He's like, what are you doing for the podcast? I'm like, I've got to watch Logan. And he's like, what? What's that? And I was like Logan Wolverine. He's like, oh, okay. If you would have said Logan Wolverine, I would have known that. So I think the title didn't maybe do it any favors with audiences. I don't know. Maybe not. Yeah. Like, did you have to be like a hardcore fan to know that Wolverine's name is Logan? I don't know.
I don't know. I guess it's one of those things like you don't have to be a Superman fan to know the Clark Kent Superman. I guess their assumption is that younger people would just know that that's what it was. But to your point, not everyone's a comic book fan, not everyone's a Marvel fan. But you can argue that Wolverine is probably Marvel's most popular character after Spider-Man.
Yeah, I guess. So overall, I actually thought it was pretty good. I will say it's not really my cup of tea. This kind of thing is not my cup of tea. But I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was well done. It was really dark, lots of violence, lots of profanity. I'm glad I didn't let my kids watch it. I went into it thinking, hey, it's a comic book movie. They're like lighthearted, right? Wrong. Like super dark movie. Not just in terms of the content either. I found it the style was dark.
Yes.
It almost takes place entirely at night. It's kind of almost hard to see what's going on and the violence in it. It's like Tarantino directed a Marvel movie. I was like, wow. So, I guess my take on this as I was watching it kind of reminded me of a combination of a superhero movie, Man on Fire, and Leon the Professional.
I got no objection to that comparison.
That's what I felt. I made a note of that because I thought it felt like those kind of concepts were kind of all wrapped up into here. Oh, by the way, I have a trivia question for you, Derek. Since you love these Marvel movies so much, what was the first feature film to headline a Marvel comic book character?
Howard the Duck.
Oh, very good. From 1986. Yes. Very well done. Oh, you do know your stuff. Okay, so back to this movie. So Logan was released in the U.S. theaters on March the 3rd, 2017, directed by James Mangold. It stars Hugh Jackman, Patrick Stewart, Richard E. Grant, and Daphne Keane. So the budget was just over $100 million. It made $226 million at the domestic U.S. box office, but it did take in $600 million worldwide. Wow.
Yeah, it did very well.
My gosh. I want to take a look
for an Oscar.
It did. Let's take a look at the box office for 2017. I always ask you this. Any guesses what you think the top grossing movie was that year?
Oh, it's got to be a franchise film. It was I got to think Harry Potter was probably done by then, so probably not Harry Potter. Probably a Marvel movie. One of the Avengers movies perhaps, or Iron Man 3.
Star Wars episode 8? The Last Jedi.
Last Jedi, yeah. Franchise movie. I was just in the wrong franchise.
And then number 2 is Beauty and the Beast. I'm assuming that was like a live action remake of the Disney movie.
Speaking of Harry Potter, wasn't it the girl from Harry Potter, isn't that?
I don't know. And then number 3 was Wonder Woman. And then look at this. Number 4 was Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Number 5 is Spider-Man Homecoming. 6 was It. 7, Thor Ragnarok. 8, Despicable Me 3. 9, Logan, so made the top 10. And then 10, The Fate of the Furious. Sequels and
franchises. That's all of them. Yep.
You wonder why I go back and watch Jaws over and over again. Nothing but crappy sequels every single year. Oh, my God. You mentioned something I thought was interesting, because this movie was rated R. And there was a time when studios tried to make all their movies PG.
Yep.
Because they could get more bums in the seats, right?
Yeah.
But between this and Deadpool, there's like this willingness to sort of sacrifice at least some of the initial box office, because they'll get it back eventually. But they're willing to sacrifice that to make an edgier movie, I guess is the...
Well, and I think it's, again, it's sort of know your audience kind of thing, right? Where because it is established characters with an established franchise, that they can confidently assume that a strong number of the fans that have come to the previous movies are going to come to this one, assuming they're old enough to get in the theater. And, I think if this had been a movie on its own that wasn't tied to a comic book franchise, it would have been a much harder sell for them to get it made.
Mm-hmm. So I mentioned I don't know much. Like going into this, I didn't know much about or anything about Wolverine. So do me a favor. Just take a quick minute and educate me. Give me like the Cliff's Notes synopsis of what the hell Wolverine is.
So Wolverine is a comic book character from the Marvel Universe. Mm-hmm. The name that he goes by is Logan. He's a mutant, so part of the X-Men, and so his mutant superpower is he has super powerful regenerative healing powers, And they've sort of alluded in some tellings that he also, because he's called Wolverine, he has like heightened senses, like his ears are a little bit sharper and his sense of smell is a little bit sharper. He can like track people by scent. Again, I think they sort of haven't really delved into that parts in the movie. And then over and above all of that, he was part of like a secret government program that we don't know anything about, where they basically fused special metal over all the parts of his bones. Like they infused it into his body, and because he has this super healing factor, he was able to survive the operation. And so all his bones are covered with this adamantium, is supposed to be the most powerful and strongest metal in the Marvel universe. And then he's got these 3 retractable claws that come out of each hand, and so he can do some real damage. And that's sort of him in a nutshell. All right, yeah, and he's Canadian. He's Canadian. That's a big thing too.
Wolverine is Canadian.
Wolverine is Canadian.
Because Hugh Jackman isn't Canadian.
No, Hugh Jackman is not. But
he's
character
Australian.
Of Wolverine is supposed to be Canadian.
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
Well, let's talk about the cast. Let's talk about Hugh Jackman. Like I say, he's from Australia. He mostly did theater before he played Wolverine.
He's a song and dance man.
Yeah, I don't really know a lot of his other work. I mean, I can go and look it up on IMDb and list it for you, but I'd just rather speak to my experience with his acting, and it's not much. I did watch him in a movie on a flight I was on one time. It was the flight was going from San Francisco to Toronto, so it was like a long flight. And it was one of those flights where they have like the few drop-down screens, and they play something, and either you watch it or you don't. You know, it wasn't like the ones where there's the screens in the seat in front of you, and you can watch whatever you like. Remember that time that I told you about? I was on the flight and they had those screens in front of me, and I watched Carrie.
Yeah.
And there was a guy beside me with his young son, and the movie opens up with all these like teenage girls in the shower. The kid was pretty happy. The man, not so much. Yeah. So, but anyway, I digress. So I'm on this flight from like San Francisco to Toronto, and they played this movie called Prisoners, and it was with Hugh Jackman, and Jake Gyllenhaal and Paul Dano, and it was really good. Like, it should have been nominated for a boatload of Oscars. I thought it was that good. I think it was overlooked almost entirely. I think it might have been nominated for like best cinematography or something like that. But Hugh Jackman was just amazing in that movie, and like the way he goes between being the good guy and the bad guy, it's outstanding to watch. So I had seen him.
He's a pretty strong actor.
Yeah, I had seen him in something before this, and I agree. He is a strong actor, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. You seen him in anything else?
I'm sure I have. He's done a handful of paycheck movies too. I know it was one, I think it was called Real Steel, where it was like boxing robots and stuff. And he was in Les Mis. Not that I watched it because I'm not a big musicals guy, but they did a remake of Les Mis not too long ago, and he was one of the leads in that. Let me think. What else did I see him in recently? I'm just cycling through his IMDb. Oh, he was in the movie Chappie. So you and Yancey did a review of the movie District 9.
Mm-hmm. We did.
So the guys who wrote and directed District 9, they also did a movie a few years later called Chappie about a robot that gains sentience, and Hugh Jackman plays the villain who's like this mercenary hired to hunt down the robot. He was, again, it was not the kind of role you expect him to play, but he was pretty good in that.
Well, for what it's worth, too, I've heard he's an amazing person in real life.
Yes, I've heard that.
So many famous people are like kind of just egotistical. You know, they always say you should.
Prestige. Sorry, man. I'm looking through. He was in Christopher Nolan's The Prestige.
Oh,
with,
okay.
Christian Bale. Yeah, that was really good. Oh my God, we have to do that on the podcast. Have you ever seen that one, The Prestige?
No.
Oh my God, I'm writing that down. We're going to do that sometime soon.
No, but back to Jackman. I heard he's really good. You know, like there's this old sort of adage that says you should never meet your heroes.
Yes,
in case they turn out to be jerks and spoil everything for you. Luckily for me, I met Henry Winkler, and he was like the kindest, nicest person I've ever met in my life. Nice. But I've also heard good things about Hugh Jackman. Like even other actors and crew members say that he's just amazing to work with, and he seems really generous to his fans. Just an all-around good guy. So there's that. Patrick Stewart. We should probably mention him. Probably best known.
Sir Patrick Stewart.
Oh, he's Sir, is he? Known for playing Captain Picard on Star Trek: The Next Generation. Derek, I don't know if I've ever mentioned this to you, but I'm gonna come out now and say this. I have never seen a single episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Wow.
I never had a desire to watch it.
They call me the caveman. Like, come on, get out of the cave and watch.
I don't know. I couldn't have cared less about it when it came out, I remember. But that seems like an odd role for him. Like, he was a Shakespearean actor. He was in the Royal Shakespeare Company. Mm-hmm. Although I guess Shatner played Captain Kirk, and he spent a lot of his younger years doing Shakespeare in Stratford, Ontario. So I guess it's like a kind of a thing, I guess. You do Shakespeare, then you go into like Star Trek. I don't know. But can you shed maybe a little bit more light on Patrick Stewart for us? You know, he's Sir, but I mean, I don't know that much about
Patrick Stewart. I'm familiar with sort of his more recent stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I know he, like, to your point, he was obviously a very successful stage actor for years. I think he was in that miniseries from the 80s, I, Claudius, if I remember correctly. I think that was one of his big breakouts. And then obviously Star Trek: The Next Generation, the late 80s through the 90s, and then he became a fan favorite, a science fiction icon, and then of course they've been rebooting and remaking all these Star Trek things, so he's been able to cash in those paychecks for the last 5 years. Like, they've got the new Picard series that ran 3 seasons. So
you mentioned that on a previous podcast, didn't you?
Yeah, season 1 was pretty good, 2 was garbage, and 3 was amazing. And then he's been Professor X in the X-Men since 1999 as well. So, between the X-Men franchise and the Star Trek franchise, he's been drawing some pretty good money in, and I imagine he's been doing a tremendous amount of theater on the side. In between these big stints. Oh, and the other thing that he does, American Dad, the cartoon by Seth MacFarlane, who created Family Guy. Patrick Stewart plays Avery Bullock, who is the director of the CIA, because the dad in Family Guy is a member of the CIA. So Patrick Stewart does voices in almost every episode of American Dad, and so he also lends his voice in Family Guy a lot. So he's been working pretty steady. And I mean, he's obviously doing other things as well, but that's sort of where people are probably going to recognize. Obviously, it's going to be Star Trek, X-Men, and they're going to definitely know his voice from American Dad. He does a lot of the voice work for Seth's show.
Richard E. Grant played the bad guy. He's always been a character actor. I remember him from Spice World, the Spice Girls movie that came out back in like 97 or whatever it was.
So you've seen Spice Girls, but you haven't seen Star Trek: The Next Generation? Like, we need to talk, man.
I just remember seeing clips of that back, because I mean, like, that was really huge. But Richard E. Grant, he doesn't really have the look for like a leading man or a romantic lead or anything like that. But he was in the last Star Wars movie too, wasn't he?
It's a hell of me. I don't know. I sort of recognize him, but I don't really know much of his work.
Yeah, I know. I think he was in the Star Wars. But although you know how I feel about the prequels and sequels, so there's that. Stephen Merchant, I want to give a shout out. So he played the you would know the character, the bald albino guy.
Yeah, Caliban.
Okay,
yep.
So I remember him. I recognized him right away, even though he had all that makeup on and everything. Mm-hmm. He was in a TV show called Life's Too Short. It's basically a look at the day-to-day life of Warwick Davis, the dwarf actor.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
I know of it. I've never seen it.
Oh, my God, dude. You got to do yourself a favor. Google Life's Too Short Liam Neeson. The scene is on YouTube. And don't do it now when we get off the air. Anybody that's listening, Google Life's Too Short Liam Neeson. So Liam Neeson does this improv bit with Ricky Gervais and Stephen Merchant. I absolutely killed myself laughing. It is the most deadpan funny thing that I've seen in a long time. So I recognized him right away, because even though he was like all bald and chalky white and everything like that, but recognize him. And then we should give a shout out to Daphne Keane. She's the Spanish actress that played the little girl. I thought she was really good in this.
She was really good. And she's since this movie, she was the lead character in the HBO series, what the hell is it called? His Dark Materials. It was based on a series of books. The first one was called The Golden Compass. Mm-hmm. So people might be familiar with that, because they made a really bad movie adaptation of that with James Bond and Nicole Kidman years ago. But anyway, HBO did a series. It's 3 books, so they did 3 seasons, and she was the lead in that, because the story follows this little girl as she goes through this adventure. And so I assume largely based on her success in this Wolverine movie, this Logan movie, that certainly got her foot in the door as the main character in this other series. And yeah, she was quite good in that. So I think we're going to continue to see great things from her as she
I kept thinking throughout the movie, though, I'm like, where have I seen her before? I looked up her IMDb after me. Nope, didn't know anything. I just felt like I've seen her. Maybe she looks like a Spanish version of Abigail Breslin from Little Miss Sunshine. Something just stuck out to me.
Well, I'm looking now. It says she's also in the Disney TV series The Acolyte, the Star Wars series that just came out this summer.
No, I don't watch anything but the original trilogy, so I haven't seen that. Oh, I want to give a shout out to Elizabeth Rodriguez. So she played Gabriella, Laura's mom.
The mom, yeah. Well, said she was.
So yeah, exactly. I remember her from Orange Is the New Black. Oh my God, I don't know if you've ever seen that show. She was amazing on that show. She was this foul-mouthed woman. Oh my God, she was so good. She didn't have a whole lot to do in this movie, but I do think she made a lot of her screen time in this. She definitely made the most of her screen time when she was in Orange Is the New Black. I got to tell you. Oh my God, she was great. So you mentioned before the X-Men and how Patrick Stewart was in the X-Men. Just like you did with Wolverine, can you give me some background on the X-Men? Because, again, I've never read an X-Men comic, nor have I ever seen an X-Men movie.
Sure. So in the 1960s, when Marvel was putting out their comic books, one of their first comic books they put out after Fantastic Four and Spider-Man was the X-Men. And the idea was, this was the 60s, right? There was a lot of fear about like nuclear radiation and stuff like that. So the X-Men were characters that had a mutation, and this mutation was a genetic mutation. And each person who was a mutant who had this genetic mutation had some sort of special superpower. And most of them had a superpower that you could fairly easily disguise, but some people, as the comic book series went on, had mutations that were like, you know, my skin changed color, or I grew horns, or like I have blue fur all over myself. So, you know, the idea was that in the comic books, the X-Men were constantly facing persecution because in the Marvel universe, the mutants, they called them muties as like their derogatory term for them, were constantly being treated poorly by the masses. And you could substitute mutant for any disenfranchised group, which was part of the appeal of this series. Was, you know, people could read the X-Men and you would say, oh, well, I'm a person of color, I see myself in them because I've felt this, or I'm I'm a woman, or I'm an immigrant, or I'm someone who has felt the same things that these mutant characters have felt. And so it was a good way for Marvel to reach an audience that maybe did not necessarily see themselves represented in mainstream comic books. And I mean, the characters were depicted as teenagers. They were at a school. That was sort of the cover. Professor X was the headmaster of the school, and he was not only providing them with an education, but he was teaching them how to control their superpowers. And then on the side, they would fight other supervillains and such. And so the X-Men as a concept has continued since the 1960s, and the roster has continued to change over the years as new characters have come and gone, and as they've developed new ideas about how these characters can grow and develop. Some characters have died, some of the characters have aged, and they've given them their own stories and series. But the X-Men as a group, as a team, has always been there. And the idea of the mutant as the persecuted class continues to this day in the comic books. Obviously, the material is treated a little differently, but you continue to see how the X-Men and the mutants in the Marvel Universe, in the comic book Marvel Universe, are definitely stand-ins for any group that has felt persecuted by the masses.
And the X-Men is obviously really on brand for Stan Lee, because he was always about inclusiveness and things like that. So
absolutely,
that seems pretty cool.
Absolutely.
One thing I noticed watching this film, they kept showing X-Men comics throughout the movie, and I was a little bit confused because I was like, this is a movie about X-Men. How are they aware of X-Men comic books? Like I don't know. I thought that was odd. Like,
well, they sort of mentioned that through the course of the dialogue, where he said like some of this stuff happened, or it was like it sounded like as the X-Men in the movie world did what they were doing and they fought villains, some people thought we can make an easy buck off of this. Let's create comic book stories and we'll use the facts that people see in the news as part of the story, and then make up a bunch of stuff beside. And since a lot of them a lot of the X-Men characters wear masks, what are they going to do? Sue us? Well, they'd have to reveal their real identity. So of course they're not going to sue us. We can do whatever we want. And so and Logan says it a few times through the course of the movie, where he's like, these things in this comic books never really happened. These were just stories that some, opportunistic writer and artist thought we can make a quick buck. So, yeah.
You mentioned the mutants. I thought it was interesting when they were watching that Gabriella's phone. She had a video on her phone, And she's like taking like secret videos in the lab, and she's like, we're going to try and rescue as many children as we can. We're going to take them north to a place that's safe for mutants. I was really, really hoping she was going to say the safe place for mutants is Canada.
It was Canada.
It wasn't. I thought it was North Dakota.
No, they were meeting in North Dakota and crossing the border into Canada.
Oh, because
they said it's 6 miles to the border.
Oh, because Canada is Eden. You know, that's a good name for it. So, I thought so. They all came to Canada. Oh man, that's a good place for mutants.
That was the plan, and that was part of the wink, wink to those in the know is that Wolverine, again, the character Wolverine is supposed to be Canadian, right. So it was like he's going to lead them back to where he's from, right? They're like, this is our Eden, this is our safe place, this is our promised land. It's like they don't come right out and have him say, well, I've been there, that's where I'm from. But it's a nice way to wrap up the story, right?
Canada is the promised land, let's be honest.
Well, of course. I don't know if Vancouver is, but
apparently not. There's too many riots there. With Logan, I really love how he has these superpowers. Like he's got like super strength and regeneration and retractable claws, but he wears reading glasses. Like, I really thought it was given that human vulnerability or like that aging that you were talking about. I thought that was kind of a neat touch to this.
Well, and one of the things they previously have always established is that he's got this super duper healing factor. So like in the previous movies, someone would shoot him with bullets, and then like 3 seconds later, you would see the bullets literally pop out of his body and the wound just close automatically. Well, as they very early on in this movie showed you, his powers are not as powerful as they once were. He's getting older, like all of us. You know, your body starts to break down and deteriorate. And if you are familiar with the nuance of his character, basically what he says is, because somebody talks, I can't remember, it was a line in the dialogue where he says to someone, I'm sick, and they're like, oh, you should find out what's causing you to be sick. And he said, I know what it is. And the idea here is it's the metal that is infused all around his skeleton is slowly poisoning him. And when he was a young man and his healing factor was working at 100% efficiency, the poison was being negated. Like any damage the poison did to his body was being healed immediately. But as he's been getting older, the healing power of his body can't keep up with it. So it's literally killing him.
Mm-hmm. And I love how you say when we all get older, we all kind of start deteriorating like that. I spent today taking my kids to a water park. I can barely sit in this chair and podcast with you. I'm so sore. So I get it.
Dude, you're lazy. You're doing the lazy river wrong.
Apparently. So I want to mention the girl too. Like her superpowers, like she had claws like Wolverine. And I guess they made her in a lab from his genes or something. Was it? Because she had the same superpowers. Like she was fast and she healed fast, right?
Yeah, she was like we'll call it a clone for lack of a better term. She was a clone derived from his DNA so that she would have the similar superpowers to him. And again, because the idea was the government was going to turn these young kids into weapons, they already saw how effective Wolverine was as a weapon over the 50 years. So they're like, well, if this little girl has the same healing power, let's give her the same kind of claws and steel skeleton and all the rest of that jazz. And so again, we're introduced to the next generation Wolverine. I think in the comics they originally called her X-23, which if you looked through all of the in the movie when they have those file folders and they're looking through all the cases, all the kids are X-23, and then it gives you like a code name to them. And then the version of Wolverine that he fights at the end, the evil Wolverine, is X-24. He's like the next generation. So yeah, the young girl in the comics starts as X-23, and then they eventually just start calling her Wolverine.
Interesting concept in this film I want to talk about. Bad guys versus good guys. So at one point, the bad guy says to the bald albino guy, what'd you say his name was?
Caliban.
Well, he said,
from the Tempest.
Okay, so the bad guy says to Caliban, he's like, why don't you come back and just do one more favor for the good guys? And I don't know, maybe he's using like a psychological tactic on the guy, but he presents his side as the good guys. Yeah. And it got me thinking, it's an interesting concept, I think, to consider. Like, not just in this movie, but in general. Like, who are the good guys and who are the bad guys? Like, usually it's pretty clear to most observers. But the thing is, the bad guys never refer to themselves as bad guys, you know?
Right. Everybody's the hero in their own story.
Yeah, like the Empire doesn't call themselves bad. Norman Bates doesn't see himself as a bad guy. Hannibal Lecter doesn't see himself as a bad guy. And even in real life, you get like Mussolini or Putin or even like Trump down in the States. Like these guys don't think they're the bad guys, you know? So I think it's interesting when a movie explores this notion of like good guys and bad guys. Like I mentioned when I watched Prisoners, that whole line of like who's good, who's bad, it gets blurred sometimes, you know? And I think sometimes the pursuit of doing the good or the right thing can lead you to do things that would otherwise label you as the bad guy. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know. I just think it's cool. There was a scene near the end of this movie where the girl's like, I've hurt people. Mm-hmm. And Logan's like, well, you have to learn to live with that forever. And she's like, yeah, but they were bad people. He goes, doesn't change anything. You still have to live with it.
Yep.
So I don't know. Maybe that's the point. Like good guys are sometimes forced to do bad things, but they never lose sight of their conscience or the burden that they need to bear because of those actions. Bad guys just don't care, right? Everything's just transactional. They have no conscience about it. Maybe that's, I don't know. I thought that was an interesting concept that they explore a bit. Well, I want to mention Las Vegas because they make a stop in Las Vegas, and I know you love Las Vegas.
No, it's not Las Vegas.
Was it?
It's no, it was it Oklahoma somewhere? It wasn't Las Vegas.
They pulled up in front of the Harrah's.
Harrah's is a casino chain. They're located all over the U.S.
Oh, because I think of that like there's only casinos in like Las Vegas and like Atlantic City. I don't know. I thought it was it. I don't know. I thought it was Vegas because I'm watching it and then there's like this bullet riddled, bashed in limousine pulls up in front of Harrah's. No one even bats an eye, and I'm like, yeah, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, I guess. I don't know. So I thought that was Vegas. Go figure.
No, it wasn't.
One thing I wanted to mention was this movie within a movie. So they're in the hotel room in Harrah's in wherever the hell it was, and they're watching this.
It says it was filmed in New Orleans, but I don't think it was supposed to be.
Okay.
No,
it wasn't. That wouldn't have been on the way.
It was supposed to be Oklahoma.
Okay. They're watching that movie, the old Western movie Shane.
Yeah.
From 1953 with Alan Ladd. And that movie, it got me thinking, that movie Shane is very influential on this movie because Shane is seen through the eyes of the child. It's basically about, how influential an adult can be on a child's life, even if it's only briefly that they spend together.
Right.
So clearly the director of this movie, Logan, likes the movie Shane and drew some inspiration for this film. Clearly, right?
I would assume so, yes.
Yeah. So anyway, I thought that was interesting how that kind of comes together. Another thing I wanted to mention was I'm calling it Mecha Jackman, or maybe Mecha Logan.
Sure.
Like Mecha Godzilla. That clone of Hugh Jackman at the end. It's like the Terminator. Yeah. It looks like him, but it's like stronger and harder to kill.
Yeah, it was the X-24.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that was so cool. And like all the fighting I thought was really cool. Oh, another thing I thought was really cool too was the farmhouse when they meet up with those people with the horse truck and they help them. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you recognize the actor playing the dad.
Oh yeah, it was Eric LaSalle.
Eric LaSalle.
I recognize him. I saw his name in the credit, and I'm like, I don't remember him in this movie. And then we got to that part, and I'm like, oh yeah.
As soon as he came out, I was like, oh my God, that's Daryl from Coming to America.
Or it's Dr. Benton from ER.
No, Coming to America is better. Definitely, because he's got the soul glow. What else I want to mention? Oh, I thought there was another interesting concept going on this. The scene when the truck breaks down, Hugh Jackman gets out and he's like cursing like crazy, smashing the daylights out of the truck. And the little girl's just sitting there watching him. And then she looks over and she sees a man playing like fetch with his dog. It's this juxtaposition of the two worlds. I feel like she just wants like a normal life. And just wants to be like a normal person. Even like going back to the farmhouse when they have dinner and they're like talking and laughing. And then when they go to bed, Patrick Stewart says, this is the best night I've had in a long time. It was perfect. Like maybe just the mutants just want to be left alone. Like maybe they just want to be normal people.
Well, and that's sort of the underlying story within the comics and the movies is it's like they just want to live their life and be left alone. And if that means they have to sort of hide a little bit of who they are, that's unfortunate. But that's the beauty of being at this school in the comic books is you can be yourself at this school. It's accepting of everybody, and all the mutants are there. We don't care if you look different, smell different, sound different, have funny powers, have wings, horns, claws, or whatever. You're welcome. I did read also that the scene where they were having dinner, they did a whole bunch of improvisation because they wanted it to feel more like real dialogue, like real people, like a real family would be at a dining room table. Right. And Patrick Stewart and Hugh Jackman, like they've known each other for 20 years and they've worked together in multiple movies. So there was already a lot of that familiarity between the two of them. And I read some stuff, the director's like, they had some scripted pieces, which they did. And then he's like, okay, I'm just going to let the camera run. Like, let's just go. And they had all this stuff where they just let them improvise. And they said all the footage you see on there was all from the improvisation part of it.
Nice. And that's some of the best stuff in film, is when directors let the actors improvise and provide their own perspective. And so it came through there. Yep. So, overall, it was pretty good. Like I say, it wasn't really my cup of tea overall, but I thought it was okay. Do you want to give it a rating out of 10?
Probably go with an 8, solid 8.
Okay. I think I would give it a 7. So it's not bad.
Fair. Now, one of the things on the Blu-ray DVD, I think I mentioned this on the last podcast, the director basically re-released the movie on the DVD, or on the Blu-ray rather. You can watch it in black and white. And the director basically made certain stylistic choices while he was filming it because he knew he wanted to release a version of the movie that was the exact same movie but in black and white. Now, I haven't watched it yet, but they actually, when they after the movie came out and it did very well in the theater, they re-released it like 3 or 4 months later as Logan black and white, and it ended up making a lot of additional money because people were like, yeah, I can totally see this working as a black and white film. And the black and white movie got high critical praise. So
it makes sense. Going back to what I said before, it's a very dark film anyway, even stylistically, like the way it's shot. So that doesn't surprise me. So it's pretty cool. All right, are you ready to have some
fun with Caveman?
Going to keep things simple this week, my friend. We're going to do some good old-fashioned superhero trivia.
Okay.
So I know you're just going to kill this because you're so good.
Well, I certainly hope so.
Oh, man. So I think you already mentioned this one. Sometimes I spoil the trivia questions when I mention my movies, and I think you did it here tonight. What is the name of the metal that makes up Wolverine's claws?
That would be adamantium.
All right. I'm going to try and throw a couple of tough ones at you here. Some easy, some hard. How old was Peter Parker when he became Spider-Man?
Ooh, well, he was a teenager because he was still in high school. I'm going to guess a little lower. I'm going to go 15.
Damn, good guess.
I don't think he could drive a car, so that's why I'm like, probably 15. Nice.
What was Hal Jordan's occupation before he became Green Lantern? What's that?
Test pilot.
Yeah.
He was a test.
He was a military test pilot. Very good. What do you call Wonder Woman's weapon? Hold on. What is her weapon called?
Geez. I mean, I've heard it called different things. I mean, I've always called it like the lasso of truth.
They're going to give it to you. It's the magic lasso.
Magic lasso. Okay.
And yeah, it was. You put it around them and they tell the truth. Okay. Yep. Who is the arch enemy of the Flash?
Ooh. There's so many to choose from. Captain Cold.
No, it's Reverse Flash.
Reverse Flash.
I guess the arch enemy of Cowgirl would then be Reverse Cowgirl.
Oh, my.
Is that I don't know.
I don't know if they're enemies.
They complement each other very well.
They do a fair amount of teaming up.
They do. Okay, what is the name of Wonder Woman's home island?
Oh, that's a tough one. Themyscira?
Oh, my God, you got it. How the hell do you know Themyscira? You must really like Wonder Woman. Man, didn't know you were that big of a fan. Okay, what's the name of the villainous organization that opposes S.H.I.E.L.D.?
AIM? Ooh. Hydra.
No, Hydra is correct, unfortunately.
I was trying to think of an acronym like S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah, what is the real name of Daredevil?
Matthew Murdock.
Yes. Who is the alter ego of Black Widow?
Natasha, what the hell is her last name? Romanoff.
Man, you really know this stuff. Okay, here's an easy one for you. I'll lob this one in for you. Which superhero team is made up of Cyclops, Jean Grey, and Beast, among others?
That'd be the Uncanny X-Men.
And in what year, this is the last one. Okay, let's see if you can get this one. I think you can do it, though. In what year was the first comic book featuring Superman published?
Oh, that would be Action Comics number 1.
Mm-hmm.
I got to think that was 1938.
Man, well, it's pretty clear that you know your comic books.
Well, I knew that because Batman, I knew,
superheroes.
came out in 1939, and I knew Superman was first, so I just went 1 year earlier.
Oh, and by the way, I got a surprise for you. I was at a sort of like a flea market thing that was going on recently, and I picked up a comic book for you of the Batman series that you're looking for. An old
Nice.
one. So, well, we'll have to talk about that off the air. I totally forgot.
Was it one of those first appearance ones for like $5,000? Because, you know, I always appreciate those kinds of gifts.
Yeah, well, you know, I love spending money on you if there's anything.
Yeah.
You know. Now, this one was a little bit cheaper, but I know it was one that you needed because it was on your list. So.
All right. Hey, man, every issue counts towards getting that collection filled.
Getting that collection done is like me finishing my Star Wars set of my cards. So, you know, everyone counts. Okay, so next time I guess we're going to do a topic, you know, and maybe one of our top 5 lists. We'll figure that out next time.
Yeah, well, we got a couple more weeks of summer, so hopefully we'll be able to get a show out, if not next week, the week after. I mean, summer's always tough, but as we come back to our regularly scheduled programming in September, as you go back to school, the kids go back to school, I think we'll be back to doing a weekly show. But if we're not able to get one out next week, hold tight. We'll have one the week after.
Yeah, and it'll be a topic, so we'll do that. And but until then, whether it's next week or the week after, you know, I am Chris McBride. That's Derek Myers, and we both want to say thanks for taking the time to listen to Pop Goes Your World, the pop culture podcast for the generations.
Thanks for listening to Pop Goes Your World. You can contact Chris and Derek at popgoesyourworld.com. Please take a minute and review the podcast on iTunes or wherever you download and listen to the show.